Welcome back to Proper Madness. I'm happy to have you back if you're a returning listener. If you're a new listener, my name is Sabby, and I have a very unique perspective on mental health. I believe wholeheartedly that we can turn anything that we have been through and alchemize it into bettering ourselves mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. It helps you feel less alone, to know and understand that the way out is always through the eye of the storm. Grab a cup of tea. If you're not a tea drinker, grab your coffee, and let's sit down and tune into ourselves so that we can learn to connect to other people. We never know the weight of our words and how they might help someone. Hello. Welcome back to Proper Madness. So, okay, before I even begin, who else had retrograde totally just get their butt handed to them? Because and if you don't know what I'm talking about and you're not a spiritual person, that's totally okay. You can fast forward through this part, but I feel like Mercury retrograde really just unearthed a lot of things for me mentally, emotionally, and spiritually that I figured I had already kind of moved through. And with that said, that is my own naivety of going, oh, I already worked through the things, so I must have overcome them and I do not struggle anymore. Okay. Yeah, here's the thing. A lot of lessons have come up for me this week, and I'm hoping that in sharing them, it'll help you know that you're not alone in facing it. And I'll share with you how I've gone through it. Now, before I step into the episode, a lot of you have asked me many a time, what tea am I drinking? What are the things that I have that when I record, like my teacups? Some of these, in all honesty, this is vintage. I picked this up at an antique store. And honestly, I'll be real with you. I'm pretty sure there was a ghost attached to this. Because some weird stuff would happen. Like I'm imagining a Victorian ghost. You know what I mean? She's very proper, very prim. If you listened to my discernment and intuition episode, yes, I used to see spirits as a child. I still do. Fun fact. It's not easy. Anyways, there may or may not have been a spirit attached to this beautiful vintage cup. She is no longer with us, meaning she's no longer attached to this cup. Beautiful, wonderful woman. Okay. Anyways, besides that, there's this little guy, which I love because sometimes, I don't drink a lot of tea all the time. I'm actually very, very sensitive to caffeine. So I usually have my little espresso in the morning, and then in the afternoon, I have my afternoon tea, which is when I make my tea time with Sabbies. And I found this little guy on Amazon, and I'll link it below. If you're listening to this on Spotify, so sorry, but it's like a little cute glass, single serving, 2 to 3 cup serving teapot where you can put your herbs in it, fill it up with water, it steeps, and then it's mini, and I'm a mini person, and so when I see mini things, I get excited. You've seen me use it in many of my videos. This is family, like a family heirloom. It's actually my grandmother's, my late grandmother's, so that's what this is, so I can't link that below. But the little teacup, and then the tea that I drink. I drink a lot of Harney and Sons, and I drink a lot of Club Magic Hour tea, and I'll link those below as well. So, with that said, now we can move on to the episode. I think in our healing journey, right, sometimes we forget that just because we've healed certain wounds, pasts, traumas, stories, and narratives, that they won't come back. But they do. They still kind of pop up. For me, I've been feeling a lot of shame around being of service to people. And that might get you a little confused, right? Because I have a platform where technically I am helping people. and I am serving people, and I am genuinely trying to help other people heal through the stories that I tell. But for me personally, and I don't know if anyone can relate to this, if you can, please comment wherever you like to comment. For me, the word service holds a lot of dark weight and energy. I kind of mentioned a little bit about it, but growing up, for me, being of service to someone was a very subservient, submissive, and not submissive in a positive way. And I'm giving away all my time, my energy, and my power to someone without needing anything in return, but not more like the energy of people pleasing is how me being of service to people was. So it's not the being of service to other people, it's that shadow layer underneath of it that I was having such a hard time with. And in starting my business and actually putting in all my time and effort and energy into doing something that I love and having it be of service to people, it was interesting to me because this almost like power hungry, attention seeking, very egoic, arrogant side of me came up. And I was having a really hard time within the last week navigating this because I had two sides of me kind of battling it out, but like internally, which sounds crazy, but that's how it felt. It felt very much of I started becoming more seen, and in becoming more seen, I almost like anytime I wasn't seen, my ego would flare up and go, oh my God, why aren't I being seen? I deserve to be seen. Like, oh my, it's just like she was throwing a tantrum and just became very power hungry and arrogant and just like was trying to do the most without really trying to do the most. Like to anyone who doesn't know me, you would have no idea. But to people who maybe are intuitive, sensitive to energy, they maybe could pick up on it whether or not they were aware of it. And so my energy was pushing out very aggressively instead of being my normal, natural, magnetic self that's quite grounded, right? And so here's the thing. When that shadow self came up, I went, all right, well, this is someone or something to do with some part of me when I was young that has developed like almost like this protective shell or persona in order to make myself feel better about myself, which is a very natural, normal thing. That's kind of what our shadow selves do, right? Take whatever you have been through as a kid or in your young adulthood and just completely flip that on its head. Like you make up this persona within yourself to kind of protect yourself, whether you're aware of it or not. An example / story would be when I was young, right? I wasn't very popular. I was basically invisible. Like no one really paid attention to me. If they did pay attention to me, it wasn't positive attention. It was actually very negative attention. And then at home, I had to be invisible and not stick out because, you know, the way I grew up was kind of like, you can't speak out. You can't do these things. I mean, I was a very rebellious kid. My father attests to this day. But I never felt like I could express myself because I was scared to. But it didn't make my childhood or the household easy to be in because it was chaotic all the time. And with that, I had a lot of identity issues in how I showed up. So because I always felt like I had to play it small, because I always felt like I had to be invisible, because I always felt like I couldn't speak up and that I didn't have a voice, and I never really truly felt seen. Like I always felt incredibly misunderstood by everyone around me, because no one really took the time of day to understand me. It was isolating. And so a shadow part of myself developed unconsciously, subconsciously within me of someone who is the complete opposite, that wants that attention, that wants to feel seen, that wants to feel heard, that wants to be in power, because as a kid, I felt all those opposite of things. So you take that and you put me on the internet and you put me gaining popularity, gaining followers, all the things. And that feeds into that part of myself. Oh boy. All of a sudden, she starts acting out a little bit in small ways. So I was struggling with that part of myself the majority of the week. And I had to do some very deep deep work around why that was happening and why I was showing up. And it happened in layers. Like, it didn't happen all at once, right? I'm a very self-aware person, and I'm very committed to doing work on myself. So if you're someone similar, I would say when these moments come up, don't be afraid to ask yourself the questions you're afraid to ask yourself. Don't be afraid to sit in being uncomfortable with what you're feeling. I felt very uncomfortable with feeling this power-hungry energy. I did not like it. I mean, I got off on it a little bit, I was into it for a second. And that comes into, like, we can dive deeper into kink and sensuality and shadow selves and why that is. However, not today. If you want me to go into that, please comment below. But yeah, in diving deeper into those moments, I had to sit with that discomfort. I had to sit with that part of myself and ask her some really tough questions. And truly what it looks like is me in meditation, sitting and going, okay, let's dive deep here. Why do I feel like I need to be seen so badly? Why do I feel like I need validation? Why am I scared of losing people as I step into my power? Why? Just asking. And when you ask yourself these deeper questions and you get honest with yourself and you hold yourself accountable, it's not like the next day all of a sudden you're fixed and you're good to go. No, it gives you just a little bit more awareness. And now the second layer to that is show that part of yourself some love, because really it's like the little kid or the young adolescent or this part of you that is not feeling loved or seen or accepted or whatever the shadow is. And you need to hold that part of you and talk to it. You need to hold that part of yourself and go, hey, have a conversation with yourself. If you're not someone who's very spiritual and has that ability to visualize that, I would say writing would be a good way to do it. I would say talking to yourself in the mirror would be a good way to do that. I used to talk about that all the time if you're like a long listener and an early listener. When I first started diving into self-confidence and self-love and, untangling all these parts of my subconscious, mirror work was some of the best work I did for myself. And it still is to this day. If you can't look at those deeper wounds within yourself, if you ever feel like you're stuck and like what you're going through has just kind of hit a wall, it's because you don't want to hold yourself accountable. Deep down, you really don't. It's not easy to hold yourself accountable. It's not easy to look at the parts of yourself that you feel like are not good or bad, right? I dive deeper into that into my shadow work episode, so go listen to that if you haven't. I would say the other part that I was working through this week was in being of service to other people, you're not giving parts of yourself away when you're just genuinely trying to help. I would say codependency and people-pleasing when being of service is many times what we see on the internet of people who are posting just for validation, people who are posting because they want to feel seen and not because they actually want to be of service. Not because they're using their story and what they've been through to help other people, right? For me, people-pleasing looked like in my family, like I had a time in my life where I was very, very selfish because I struggled with addiction, and I wanted to do anything and everything to get my next fix to make myself feel good at the expense of whoever and whatever. When I was, gosh, how old was I? I don't know. Trauma is a fickle thing. Like, time is tough for me. I don't know exact dates for everything that I've been through, but like I know a gist of like the timing. On my sister's, I think when I was 20, on my sister's 18th birthday, I had gone with her to a music festival with me and some friends. And she had brought one of her friends, and now I was the designated driver. And I was so selfish that I decided while I was there, like, I'm babysitting my sister. I want her to have a good time. I want her to enjoy herself. I barely really even did that. I was so self-serving that I ended up overdosing on her 18th birthday. She still tried to take care of me, even though she was pissed at me and she was tired. Someone else had to drive my car home. And when I got back, my sister didn't speak to me for a few months. My mom also did not speak to me for a few months because my mom had to come pick up my sister. I had told my mom that I would like take my sister back home, and I didn't because I was so messed up and trying to recover the next day. And that taught me a really big lesson, right? It taught me that me enjoying myself and being free and having fun was wrong. That's how my brain processed it. That's not true, because what I did was immature and self-serving, because in my house growing up, I was always trying to look after everyone else at the expense of my own mental health and trying to protect my siblings from the chaos that was happening in the house. That then when I went to college and I was free and, I really went off the deep end. Now that's like one story of several where I showed up not as a great person. And because I had many of those instances in my life, when I ended up becoming sober from drugs, not necessarily alcohol, that's a whole different story. When I ended up becoming sober after college, when I got into fitness and wellness and mindset, because I was also trying to overcome my depression holistically as well. Like, I was trying to do so many things at once that I became so in service of everyone else to almost make up for it. Like, even when I was younger, my little brother, when I was young, would always want to hang out with me and always want to spend time with me because he also was trying to navigate how to be disconnected from such a toxic household growing up emotionally, that he just wanted to spend time with me, and I'd make plans with him and I would cancel all the time, and that tore me up inside. It did. It tore me up inside because at the time when I was young, right, like I remember looking back at those moments and wishing that I would have spent more time with him. Luckily, he had my sister to depend on. But again, as soon as I went off to college and I had that freedom from everything that I had been through as a kid, I really didn't care about anyone else. I just was trying to take care of myself in the most reckless way possible. And so even then, like, when I ended up becoming sober, I was so selfless that I ended up neglecting anything that made me happy just to make other people happy. And so that word service, being of service, was something that I became within myself because it was almost like punishment to me. Like, I was punishing myself for how I showed up and who I was. I was punishing myself for who I used to be, that I ended up sacrificing my own happiness, my own well-being, my own dreams, my own aspirations, just to make everyone around me happy. And that showed up in so many different ways, right? Now you add that on top of all the other like abusive relationships that I was in after that point, and it was a mess. Then being of service and serving, it was like this very toxic, subservient energy that I just naturally embodied. Because I didn't think that I deserved to receive anything back. So, yeah. When we go through some of these traumatic things in our life, right? And I share these pieces of my story and like what I've been through and all the things, like it's not easy to sit here and talk to a camera and take accountability. Not everyone is meant to do that. I'm not saying to do that. I'm saying that through me sharing these things and letting you know, like, hey, you don't have to take on these personas to protect yourself. You don't. You don't. There's balance in everything. And there should be balance in everything. But I think we forget about that sometimes. I think we forget that the balance that we need within ourselves will be reflected to the people that we love and care about. I think we forget that sometimes those really crappy moments in our life when we didn't show up as a good person doesn't mean we're a bad person. It means we had bad moments. And I forgave myself for all those things, right? I mean, I told you like 2 or 3 things. There were just so many, as I come on here and share more and more and more of my story, everything will kind of, like the dots will kind of connect. But obviously, like if you've listened to any podcast that I have been on, you'll probably get like a little bit more of a clear picture. But there's always 2 sides to everything. I think when you express yourself on the internet, people take what you're saying and they just take it and they think they have the whole story, which I think is very silly. But we also do that with ourselves. You know how much, like within the last week or so since I've started my business, I've had to do more shadow work on these parts of myself that I thought I already handled, and then having to go back and dive deep within different traumas that I completely forgot about and having to address those. And this might be a little graphic, so I do not believe in trigger warnings for everything, but in this case I will. So I will be talking about physical assault. So if that's a topic that makes you uncomfortable, you probably don't want to listen to this unless you have a safe space to process those emotions. I have had reoccurring dreams lately of my sexual assault because it happened to me twice. And it's interesting, like being of service has such a dark energy to it because both those times, like when that happened, my brain connected like, this is happening to me and I'm being taken advantage of because I was of service to these people at one point in time. And so my fear is getting taken advantage of if I am of service to people, which is a deep, scary fear to embody and go through, but it's natural and normal. And there are things I'm working through. And I'm very grateful that I have a therapist that I can go to work through these things. But it doesn't mean that like I still don't have my moments where when these things happen, I don't go back and go, oh my gosh, like, I still get triggered. I do. I still do. And it's completely natural and normal. But like I have come to a point where I know how to process those triggers. And to know yourself is to know how you can move through those things. Obviously, I will do a podcast episode on that whole situation, how I overcame that, and how now sensuality is very healing, right? But that's a whole different beast. But anyways, these darker moments in our life, when they happen, allow yourself to sit with them so they don't become something that will allow you to develop a belief system that is not true. Because once you develop that belief system, that's how you're going to operate, right? I had no idea that that's how I was operating online without even knowing it. Like, I was recording things, putting up videos, trying to help people. I felt really weird posting about lately. It's like, hate's a strong word. I feel uncomfortable, like, when I'm online promoting what I do now, like, and how I help people, which, if you're wondering, I will put it in the description box below, because that's not what this episode is about, but you can check out my website. But when I'm starting to promote this stuff, I don't like saying, DM me for more. I'm like, oh my gosh, could you get more salesy? No. I want to feel like I'm connecting to people, and that's how I'm helping them. That's why it felt so icky and weird for me, right? Because the energy behind it felt like, oh, I'm trying to take something from you. I'm like, no, I don't want to take anything from you, because I know what it's like to have things taken away from you. I don't know if anyone can relate to this. And I don't know. You know, I'm just sharing it in hopes that you don't feel alone in how I've moved through it. But all I can say is, everything takes time. We want to rush to the end. We want a quick fix. We want the end result. And I'm sure you've maybe heard me say this before. If I haven't, and it sounds brilliant to you, great. But if you knew the ending of the book, if you rushed through the ending of something, you would feel that loss of, why didn't I enjoy the process of that? A small example was this morning. I've started having my coffee and my tea outside on my balcony every morning instead of like indoors, like, you know, staring at nothing. And I was sitting outside drinking my tea, and I was looking into the cup and just kind of like, I don't know, admiring. Sounds silly. I was admiring how great, because I know how to foam milk properly so that you can make latte art and like tea art and all those things. So I was sitting there just looking at how artistic it looked. And it's funny because like I was so thirsty this morning, I didn't have any water. I just sat outside and I was enjoying what I was hearing. And I was drinking this coffee, and I drank it abnormally faster than I usually do. Like, I usually sip with intention, I sip slowly. I knocked this thing back and I stopped and I went, whoa. I didn't even take my time to enjoy this. I didn't even take my time to savor this. I didn't take my time. I just knocked it back. And then mentally I remember going, well, my stomach's gonna hurt really bad. But how many times have we done that even with our healing process? Can you find pleasure in how you're healing even if it's messy? You know? That is all I have for you on today's podcast episode. And I hope this helped. Just know you're not alone going through whatever you're going through, you know? I am so grateful for the community that's being built on this channel and in this podcast and online, because we have a lot of people who are going through the same things and can relate to each other. If you go look at my discernment and intuition video, look at the comments of how many people are saying, oh my gosh, I get this. Oh my gosh, I get this. Okay, speak to each other. Speak to each other. You're not alone, you know? And me sharing this stuff, that's why I do it. I do it because like when I was a kid, I had no one to watch to tell me everything was going to be okay. I had no one to look to as inspiration or advice because there was no one who was going through what I was going through. And if they were, they didn't talk about it. I don't know what the title of this podcast is going to be, to be honest. I'll figure it out. I usually do. But I love you. And I'm grateful for you. And I'm happy that you're here. So move through your day with purpose and intention, and you'll be better for it. Okay, I'll see you on the next one. I encourage you to follow, like, subscribe, and rate this so that it pushes it out to whoever else might need it. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you ever want to chat more about anything that this podcast is about, you know where to find me. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and good old TikTok. And be sure to stay tuned for my Tea Time with Sabby episodes.